Sure. I'm David Soble. I'm a real estate and finance and business attorney here in Michigan, and I also practice in Ohio. And I've been practicing for the past 30 years here in Michigan and Ohio. So what I do pretty much every day is work with entrepreneurs, business people, real estate investors, and individuals in creating their business plans and reviewing their real estate contracts and business contracts. That's what I do.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
How should I select my business structure?
Well, that's a great question, and people who are going into business need to be aware that there are actually four types of business entities in the United States. The first is basically a sole proprietorship. The second is a general partnership. The third would be a limited liability corporation, and the fourth would be a regular corporation. And what your risk tolerance is, meaning what your legal risk and your financial risk tolerance is going to help you determine what type of entity you want to create. Okay?
Okay.
So here, for example, a sole proprietorship is an individual who owns a business. But if that business, for whatever reason, is sued, the individual actually is completely held liable for whatever that the business has engaged in. So the legal exposure for a sole proprietor is just as an individual. They can be legally held responsible, and they're also financially responsible for any risk that's taken and any problems that occur under that business. Okay.
All right.
Same thing with a general partnership. A general partnership is really a simple form or a structure to start a business, and it's basically the business owners are solely responsible for all the assets, all the debts, any income. It all flows to the individuals who are partners together in that entity. Okay, so the first two entities that I described earlier, which is the sole proprietorship and general partnership, they basically are comprised of people who are really carrying all the financial as well as all the legal risk. You're exposed as a business owner if you don't have the next level of protection, which is creating either a limited liability company or a corporation. So in those types of entities, those are registered with the state that you're residing in. Here we're in Michigan. So you would register with the state of Michigan, and you would create the first one would be a limited liability company, which really has the benefits of both a individual proprietorship or general partnership, in the sense that the financial risk is still going to be protected by the limited liability company, but you get the benefits, the tax benefits of being an individual with regards to how income flows. So you receive your income and you're taxed individually because it's an individual, it's a individual risk. But the limited liability company gives you the legal protection of a corporation. So the financial risks are still going to be part of the corporation, but the income is reported based on an individual tax schedule. That's pretty much what a limited liability is going to do. So it's kind of a hybrid entity between the corporation and a sole proprietorship. And then the last one is going to be the most expensive type of entity that you're going to create, and that is more complex, and it's a corporation. That is going to be an independent legal entity, just like your limited liability company, but the tax difference, or you're treated differently tax-wise, because you're going to be taxed as a corporation and not in the individual tax bracket. Okay, so depending on, and I'm not a tax attorney, and I'm also not a CPA, and we talked about this earlier, Nancy, that when you're starting out with a corporation or any type of business entity, you're going to want to consult with a business attorney to help you structure your business entity. And you're also going to want to have on your team a good CPA. And the CPA deals with the tax advantages and liabilities for your entity that you're involving yourself with. Okay? The attorney is dealing with the legal risk and exposure of the individual who's engaging in business.
Okay, wonderful. Why do I need to file my business entity with the state of Michigan?
Because if you don't, you're not recognized as a legitimate legal entity. So you actually have to file for an LLC, which is a limited liability company, or a corporation. You actually have to register with the state. You file your articles of incorporation if it's a corporate entity, or for a limited liability company, you're going to file your pretty much your bylaws. And these two items are registered with the state of Michigan. Okay, so you do have to register with the state, you file your corporation, and then you'll get that legal protection that you're looking for the legal risk that your business is entering into on a regular basis. And you get that protection from the state of Michigan for either being a limited liability company or a corporation. Okay, and for both of those organizations, a limited liability company and for a corporation, you're also going to want to have a operating agreement or articles of incorporation.
Okay, Dave. What is the difference between a sole proprietorship and an LLC?
Well, your sole proprietor is going to be an individual who just owns the business, but that sole proprietor is going to be legally exposed and financially exposed with regards to all risks taken in business. So if there's a legal problem, the individual is actually liable for whatever the business is engaged in. If there's a problem financially or any tax consequences, the individual is liable for those tax or financial risk. That's different than an LLC. An LLC is a corporate entity, and it's a hybrid, basically, of the sole proprietorship and the corporation. You get the benefit of all the legal protections afforded to you by the state. So the corporation or the LLC is going to be shielding you as the individual from any legal or financial risk. But at the same time, your income that you derive from the LLC, that's going to be taxed on an individual basis. And again, I would advise that if you're going to move forward with an LLC, that you also speak with an accountant. Okay?
Okay. What's the difference between an LLC, partnership, and corporation?
Well, we just talked about the LLC and the limited liability company, but a partnership is also just a single business, and it's really where two or more people share ownership in that business. You could have 2 people, you could have 10 people. They could be a partner, they could form a partnership. However, the one thing that they're going to have problems with is, again, if one partner, let's say, does something illegal, or if one partner has a financial issue, all the partners are going to be held responsible individually. So a partnership is no different than a sole proprietorship. They share in the profits and the losses in the business, but they also share individually. And then they also share in the legal risk as well. And they're legally exposed individually. Okay, they're individually legally exposed. They can be personally liable for the conduct of the business.
Who is responsible if my business is sued?
Well, if you have a business that's been registered with the state, you formed an entity, it could be an LLC or it could be a C corporation. When you form that entity, if the entity is sued, the entity is responsible for the legal and financial risk presented. Whereas individually, if you just have a partnership or if you have a sole proprietorship, you're liable individually for the legal risk as well as the financial risk.
How can I best protect my business from a lawsuit?
Well, the best thing that you can do is actually make sure that you form a company or a business entity with the state of Michigan. So definitely in these very litigious times, I would always recommend somebody, even if they're going to be there, if it's going to be a sole proprietorship, if somebody just wants to own a business on their own, they don't want any partners, that's fine. The best thing to do is then create a single member LLC, okay? And that basically protects the individual from any financial or legal exposure. And they get the benefit of being taxed individually based on their individual tax bracket, but they get the protection of a legal entity from the state. So if they're an LLC, a limited liability company, the company itself shields the individual from any legal exposure and litigation. Now there's a catch to that. You actually have to act and engage in business as if you were a limited liability company. That means you have to have an operating agreement. That means you have to conduct your business according to the rules and guidelines that are set forth by the state of Michigan every year. Okay?
Okay.
You just can't use it as a shield of protection without actually acting as that corporation. Otherwise, what happens is attorneys like myself, if we have to sue a business, if it's an LLC or corporation, if the individual is just using that corporation or that entity like a shield, they're just taking all the benefits of the corporation, but they're not acting like a corporation in light of what the state requires and what the laws require, then we can do what we call pierce the corporate veil. That means we can sue them individually if the courts allow us. Okay?
All right. Should I hire an attorney to review my business entity paperwork?
Definitely. Should always have an attorney review your documents. You know, in today's world, you can go online and you can form a corporation online using the internet. Here's the thing. It's very easy in these past, 15, 20 years to go online and pull whatever documentation you want off the internet. That's not the benefit of having an attorney. Where an attorney comes into play is we give you the legal opinion and the guidance to be able to move forward with that documentation. So the documents themselves, they're just form. The substance is actually having an advisor to do and to give you the advice and counsel that you need to implement those documents so that they actually do protect you. So there's a large part of my business that is actually doing what we call the prophylactic work. We actually help small business owners create the documentation, okay? And we're protecting the client up front. There are quite a few people that come to us, however, unhappily, and they come to us after they've done documents on their own without the benefit of an attorney, and now they're being sued for whatever their business is engaged in. They have a lawsuit, and maybe that document that they used off the internet hasn't given them the protection that they were looking for. And that's because they didn't have an attorney review the documents before they implemented them, okay? So it's easy to get the document online, all right? It's another thing to be actually legally implement those documents to protect the client.
Okay. Which business shelter or structure creates the greatest tax shelter?
Well, I'm going to have to defer to an accountant, but in generally speaking, and I would defer my clients to an accountant because everybody has a different financial background and issue. But in general, I like to work with the limited liability companies for a small business owner. It gives you the benefit of paying the income based on a personal tax rate, an individual tax rate, but it gives you the protection, the structure of an LLC gives you the legal protection of a corporation. So a limited liability is the best structure in my opinion for small businesses because nobody's personally liable for the company's debts or liabilities. The limited liability company actually is a hybrid, and it has the characteristics of a corporation, but then it also has the characteristics of a sole proprietorship or a partnership. It blends the two. So an LLC to me is the best way to go for a small business owner. I do have some small business owners come in and they form a corporation, which is a C corporation. They then have to go one step further and they have to elect what we call a tax designation, which is called an S corporation, which gives you different tax benefits. And it gets a little complicated there, but I can tell you that when you do an S corporation or you do a C corporation, you do need to actually, pay a little bit more for the advisory services every year. So an LLC is a better way to go. Okay.
Do you think that a company, once the company profits $10,000, it's best for them to switch to a corporation? Or at what point do you think an LLC should switch to a corporation?
I have LLCs that, make income well over $1 million. An LLC is great protection. It's no different. It gives you and affords the protection of a corporation. It's just that when you get your income, the business income that you derive is actually passed through to your individual income tax bracket. That's the benefit of an LLC. Okay, you're treated like a sole proprietorship for that purpose, but you are not liable for the business's liabilities. Okay, that's the difference.
Okay. Two more questions. Why do I need an EIN number and how much does it cost?
Well, an EIN number is an employment identification number. It's also known as a tax identification number, and it doesn't cost you anything. You, when you form your corporation, the minute you start earning income, you need to have this TIN number, they call it, tax identification number. You can go online to irs.org, irs.gov, It's irs.gov, and you can get that tax ID number just by registering online. Okay, you provide the IRS with the state corporate identification number, and then you'll get that usually sometimes within 24 hours, sometimes immediately, but you do get it relatively quickly. And you need that to be able to start earning an income that you can then report to the IRS. More importantly, if you're going to go and open up a bank account with a bank or a credit union, they need to see that you have not only your tax identification number, but you also need to have your operating agreement for your corporation.
Okay. And then how much does it cost me on average to file my business structure with the state?
That really, it depends, but the actual filing fee is $50. But the legal work, it depends on how complicated. It can range from several $100s to several $1,000s, depending on the business structure you're choosing. Okay?
Okay.
So you don't have it. There's really no cost involved if you're doing a sole proprietorship, except you're going to have to remember the legal and financial exposure you can have without, forming a corporation. So it could be expensive later on.
Okay. And then Dave, if some of the Detroit Business Hub Group members watching this video want to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Well, thanks, Nancy. My office, we can be reached at 888-789-1715, or you can go to provenresource.com. You can also just type my name into the URL on the internet, and our law firm will show up. So that's pretty much the easiest way. Okay.
All right. Well, we would love for you to become a member with the Hub Group. Let us know if you have any more questions about membership and when we can get you started.
Okay. Thanks so much, Nancy. Take care.
Okay. You do the same. Thanks for taking the call.